tapping in. Are we live?
So, current news today is particularly serious. After weeks of serious discussions covering all sorts of wars, atrocities, and immigration issues, we had to come up with some light.
We tried to come up with something light, although, fam, we've researched a lot of things on this podcast. Like, I have entered many a Google search into my laptop and phone to curate content for y'all's cranium. All right. Nothing has messed up my algorithms as quickly as Googling why aren't men having enough sex. Like, this was a mind, right?
It gave you suggestions. Come on, man. Hot girls in your city now.
But like, it was like, okay, yeah. Well, first of all, there's a lot of creeps out there, but it was also like I mean, like, seriously, like the personality, like YouTube personalities that people should investigate. But also, like, my ads immediately shifted to like dick pills and just like weird stuff like guns. Like, I'm dead serious. I'm so serious. My YouTube ads switched immediately to like guns and like just all sorts of strangeness, man. Like, which I think to me says there's a community or a profile of person, like people are looking this up and there's a group of other things that they're looking up, and it's alarming.
Yeah, Viagra and guns immediately after. That's a terrible combination.
Words.
But that being said, what the actual study is, a study came out that 30% less men between the ages of 18 and 30 are having sex 30% less, right? So indicating that there's been a massive decline in the amount of partners that people are having. People specifically were saying, reporting that people have 62 times a year, which that number has gone down to about 54 this year, right? So there is a steep decrease in these numbers that people are seeing across the board, which begs us to have to ask ourselves, in the name of content information and sharing, why is that the case? Why are men specifically having less sex?
You asking me? I don't know.
Dude, you're the expert.
I'm the expert on having sex.
Sexpert.
See, that's my brother. Only my brother would do the due diligence to label me as the expert of not having sex. But hear me now, non-sex. All right. I mean, when I jump to like what I really think is going on, like a big part of it is like social media. But it's funny that you put me as the expert because, right, like dating has shifted to the phone, right? And I was actually the person that refused. I've never had Tinder, never had Hinge, never had Bumble, never had Stumbled Upon. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never had any of the dating apps. So it's funny because it's like the culture shifted completely to that. And even now that it's in the palm of your hand, people are having less sex. So that's crazy to me.
But that speaks to a bit of the statistic where they're saying that the increase in social media usage has an increase in anxiety and depression. And both of those things are a counter motivator for people to pursue sex. Some of the studies also saying are the theories around them is the fact that the pursuit of sex, or at least the process of getting in motion forward, because even at the very least, if you want to have sex, you need to be in motion towards it, unless it's right next to you. So there is a mobility and a pursuit-esque innate instinct for us to be able to pursue sex in that way. So when you move that towards the phone and you move that towards online, specifically with online porn, what you end up, that's some of the theories that have been brought up. That's the porn, y'all. Shocker.
I was timing how long it took porn to come into this conversation. 3 minutes. Not bad.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious when you bring it up like that. It's like men are having less sex, but watching a lot more porn.
Yeah, and the technical term that I came across and like checking this out was that the internet has made it really easy to satisfy our social and our sexual needs. And there's not as much incentive to go out and like in the real world to satisfy those needs. And I ain't gonna lie to you, it's been a couple of times where staying at home with the laptop was the right decision. All right. So
Amen to that.
that's important to say. But I think there's a question here of like, first of all, wait, men are having less sex, but like, how much sex should we be having? I think there's like an underlying thing that we're always like more, but like, but is that the case? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think we're conditioned to think like by porn in a lot of ways that we're supposed to be like having sex a lot, you know, and well, and that's not all.
Yeah. Well, the number that I came across is that the average amount of partners that a person has within a lifetime is between 2 and 3. So I know that was my reaction.
Yes, right? Correct. Indeed.
Indeed, that checks out. So that was kind of that was included. You're right. There is a big element of it, which is the porn impact on sex expectation and sexual health. A big part of the number why people are also having less sex, at least with women, is that their first sexual encounters are not pleasant encounters and therefore associate pain towards that and end up just, staying away from that act because of the initial pain of somebody who did not know what they were doing or were recreating porn scenes and porn like things like choking a woman type thing.
You're saying that that's increasing. Women saying that their first sexual encounter wasn't pleasant. Is it increasing?
No, saying that a reason that women have noted having less sex is the fact that their first experience is not pleasant, and therefore, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So, like, when you look at the numbers of people having less sex, and you think about hopefully people being more informed about what consent is and sex in a lot of ways becoming less taboo in popular culture, you would hope that like consent is being better understood. So maybe a small fraction of these numbers is, like you're saying, women that aren't all the way into it or aren't sure that they want to have sex with this person and are feeling more comfortable saying no, right? In situations where previously, because of the societal pressure we've put on women and the lack of discussion until the last decade or so, right? Where if I'm alone with this person and we like each other, I guess we're going to have sex, like, you know, and maybe, hopefully, I'm just trying to be optimistic, but maybe part of it is people, yeah, understanding like both partners saying no in a context of like, oh, well, we've both got drunk, we're both drinking, but we know that that's not that impedes consent. I'm hoping that maybe some of these numbers are people being more informed and being more conscientious about the types of sex we're having.
Yeah. So part of even the change in the social dynamic, right, is part of it is that the act of approaching people is different. Like we said, a lot of engagement and interaction is online, and also people have most sex when they're in a relationship, and relationship numbers are decreasing as well. And that's across the board. And part of the reasons that might be able to happen is if you take into account, we have been saying depression, anxiety, those mental health issues on an all-time low, or mental health issues at an all-time high, let me say. And so you factor that into play, and then that gives you a certain element of it. Also, because of the economy, some people, a lot more men are going now back home to live with their parents and live in the household with their mom, that type of thing. That turns out statistically, gentlemen, is going to decrease your chances.
Your mother certainly hopes so. Respect your mama's house, y'all, for real.
Yeah, you respect your mama's house. But funny enough, another determinant, which I found funny but doesn't necessarily speak to statistic, but more so towards how we end up choosing partners, is that somebody's body odor is one of the largest predeterminers of if somebody's going to find someone attractive or not to be able to sleep with, almost making it a deal breaker.
Interesting. That's funny. I've never thought about that so much in the context of like the initial phases of a relationship, but it is something that like partners have asked for, like, give me something that smells like you. And I'll be like, here go a gym shirt. You know what I mean? Like, as somebody who doesn't really put on like cologne like that, it'd just be the natural berries and juices. But it's funny. And especially now being in a long distance relationship, I've come to understand it more. Because like Shorty will leave stuff around the crib, but she's got this one scarf that smells like her, and that's evocative. You know what I mean? It like really smell. I think is one of those underrated senses that we don't really think of as transporting us to a place in the same way that vision, obviously, hearing, and even taste. But that'll do it to you.
Right. So talking about that smell and sense of taste, what they call the bidirectional effect is the time when women and men find each other most attractive. And they did a study was conducted to test that type of thing out, where they would have blind studies that leave men's uh, clothes that smelled like men out, and then a woman would have to choose which one she finds more attractive. And they also did the same thing about a man's symmetry. And it turns out that during a woman's pre-ovulation phase, women will find men more attractive. The same rating she would give a shirt or whatever before would give it after ovulation, it would decrease. But right the moment before, it is heightened. Same thing with taste. What's interesting is that a man finds a woman more attractive too at that same period by doing the same study, smelling her clothes and looking at symmetry. So a man will also find a woman who's more closer to pre-ovulation, more attractive.
And that's the period that immediately precedes her period too. So I do is be so frustrated. You know, she'd be like, "Oh man, you look good." She'd be like, "No." We'd be like, "Oh." But yeah, man, these are funny things. Like it is, I love these conversations too, breaking down some of these like taboos because men don't know enough about female reproductive health. Like we got to break down these barriers to where like, yo, you should know what type of tampons or pads your girl uses and be able to like hook her up if she needs that. Like you like we can be better at just like we all still giggle like we're little and that's cool to giggling, but we still gotta act grown about it. You know what I mean? We can take care of each other, get tested. Hey, you
That's
know,
a big one.
you,
Please, yo, that's such a big one.
you know what I'm saying? Like people are having less sex, like, and we're getting into a broader conversation of just about sex again in the modern age, which is one of our favorite topics. You know, shout out to the Live Nation who enjoys this content as well. But like, yeah, man, part of it is this is an opportunity, right? Again, I want people, I wish, like, yo, in the comments, tell us what you think. Like, how much sex are we supposed to be having? Maybe we're having less sex because we're thinking more, we're being more selective. In some ways, those can be good things. Now, we have countries and spaces that are examples of what happens when it goes too far. But you know what I'm saying? I just think we all, man, as maybe I'm traumatized from my research, but like the obsessiveness with having sex and using it as a validation for your own like humanity, like as if you deserve it, like that's such a problem. So I guess what I'm trying to introduce is the notion that it's cool not to be out here running through sex on a regular basis. Like that's okay.
I like that. I like that point. It's just like, yo, look, even if you're not in constant pursuit, skirt chasing, that's cool if you're not doing that. That does not reflect the reality of a majority of men, especially those that are busy, those that are on their grind, those that are preoccupied. You know what I mean? That opportunity of doing that decreases. Now, granted, anything is possible if you put your intention behind it. If you really want to make that a priority, there's many things that you could do in order to be able to increase your level of attractiveness, your exposure to people that you want to get with, because that's also important. Because of how lonely people feel, people are also out here craving intimacy and also craving partnership. So if one, understanding the difference between those two things, intimacy and partnership, but it doesn't take away from the things that people can do in order to get themselves to be more attractive. um it's small things even.
Yeah. And I think, man, you bodied it, right? Like recognize what you're craving, whether it is partnership, whether it is intimacy, whether it is just sex, and recognize that you might have to start with friendship first, or an introduction first, or a straight up rejection first. Because
Oh yeah.
that's how a lot of these things start. The landscape is changing. Like we said, a lot of it is moving online. So it's normal to be rejected trying to talk to somebody in person. Be very careful about the way that you try to do that because the way that we think about even how appropriate that is changing. Not being prescriptive, different things are going to work for different people. But I love what you said about like if you really are, if you feel like you're not having as much sex as you want to be having, think about where you need to start and where the appropriate place to start. And a lot of that is get up, get outside, step away from the laptop in the lotion, you know? You feel me? You feel me?
Definitely step away from the laptop and lotion because there's a addictive characteristic behind that.
There's an addictive characteristic, and I think we're caught in this space, man, like where people, especially young men, feel like, yo, we deserve like sex. If we're good people, if we're good young men, like we should be like women should throw themselves at us, right? And consent, like on off rip. But the thing is, like, there's a difference between our basic human needs and everybody else being responsible for providing that for you, right? So like just because you feel the urge to have sex doesn't mean that any woman in your life, in your proximity, is responsible for making that happen for you, right? That's still on you. And there's a possessiveness that I'm seeing, especially in the culture that comes up as we do a lot of this research. That I don't know. There's more understanding around that that's needed, I think.
That comes from the gamification of sexual attraction and of sexual engagements. Everything has gone digital, so you're able to gamify that by being able to do that. That reduces one's that reduces the ability to appreciate, for instance, patience, if you will, right? The ability to be able to appreciate courting and the process that it takes to be able to get to know somebody in a way that they then feel comfortable with allowing you to be intimate with them. And the same thing vice versa. This is not just for men, but you know, it's the same thing for women too. But being able to swipe right and swipe the same fingers and screen we use to play a game is the same fingers and screen we use to choose a mate. And those things are one swipe away, sometimes one command away. And because of how close they are to each other, in order to be able to separate how we approach both of those things becomes difficult. So that's why.
Yeah, man. I think a lot of what we're just saying is just be thoughtful about how the influences that are allowing you, that are controlling these urges. Like these are powerful urges. Like you said, like on a biological level, these are some of the most powerful urges we have. And when they're influenced by businesses, because that's what porn is a business, right? It's a business that like tries to give you present your fantasy as something that's real without telling you like they done took 8 breaks. He done took 12 dick pills. Like she is not enjoying this. Like she is saying, like, so they're selling you this thing and making you want to keep coming back to this thing. And it doesn't represent what we should actually be pursuing in real life, right? It's a business. They generating revenue through this. So just be mindful of the ways that what we consume impacts like really, really your urges and your body and the way you move it in these streets. Move cautious.
Move cautious. And if the vulnerable is still powerful, uh, and speaking about and then opening up about my own story and like where I'm at, G. Same what you're saying about understanding things are urges. That's how my relationship with sex is understanding that it is a urge, much like any other type of urge to eat, because it's something that you can become addicted to, and it also is a endorphin recent. It's an endorphin based uh, endorphin based value that you get once you know that's what you emit in your brain. So that feeling you can get addicted to, which is why porn addiction is so frequent. You know, it's the same thing why people can also become obsessed with the pursuit of sex. That type of thing happens too. So in my life, I'm just trying to be able to regulate all of my in all of my urges and controlling them to, you know, trying to be the master of my urges.
Yeah, man. I like that. I like what you said. It's about just being mindful of why you're doing what you're doing, knowing yourself, and yeah, man, keeping it real with yourself for sure. Keeping it real. Think about
Keeping
your
it
limits,
real.
you know?